Looks like we're recording here too.
There you go, okay. All right, so on time here, so let's call to order the meeting of the Green Bay Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission for Monday, January 15, 2018. Happy New Year to all. Under general business, item 1, approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 2, approval of the minutes from November 20th, 2017, Traffic, Bicycle, and Pedestrian Commission meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I want
Motion made.
clarification on that. Didn't we have a December meeting? Or no?
No.
No, okay, that's right, we did cancel. All right, I just saw that. I was like,
That's a long time
forget
ago.
what.
Uh,
Copy and paste there, right? All right, so.
Motion been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. 3, initial requests. Consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Duane on behalf of McAuliffe Neighborhood Association to evaluate the green time for southbound Challenger Drive at East Mason Street.
Okay, I guess I'll throw a few things in here and then, obviously you've got some things to say then too. So I'll just bring the intersection so we can all take an area view of what this looks like. So far east side, real close to the interchange of Interstate 43. So it's basically the first signalized intersection east of there, and then to the south is the I-43 Business Park, and to the north is a neighborhood which consists of the McAuliffe Neighborhood Association. Zooming in a little bit further here so you can see the lanes. And actually, Tom, you'll be able to see there with those markings that if you recall, it was about a year or 2 years ago. We switched up a few things there with the southbound right. We made that an exclusive because that carries about 70 to 80% of that traffic of that entire approach. So looking at that, like I said, 2 lanes. The one that's on the right here, but as you approach on the left, is a through and a left designated for those 2 movements. Looking at the amount of split time, split is green, yellow, and red clearance. It's usually how we like to refer to it in engineering world. That varies from 13 to 20 seconds. So that basically will vary by the amount of traffic there is in real time. So if there's one vehicle, it'll get that 13-second split. If there's multiple vehicles, it extends that time out to that 20-second threshold where it does it basically truncates it then. We already talked about the amount of traffic. I do have some details too on just the amount of traffic. We do have an intersection turning movement count that was conducted. I think it was in 2016 or 2017, so it's relatively recent, to where we probably won't see too much of a change. So the predominant movement that we have out of the neighborhood really doesn't surprise me, which is really going towards the interchange or towards the city. So that's southbound right, which obviously in the state of Wisconsin, right turn and reds are allowed. There is no prohibition of that at this intersection as well. That's all I have really relative to the green time. It's my understanding that I think the request is a little bit more involved than just discussion about green time. As I got I got a phone call from the DOT, and the DOT was investigating on behalf of a state senator, I believe it was our Representative Mako. And so they kind of came back to us, and it sounded like the question or the concern is more or less focused on the type of detection or the detection pattern that's at the intersection on that north leg. So that being said, I asked them to forward me any information that they had, and they forwarded me this image. And maybe I'm taking a little bit of the story here away from you guys, but I guess
That's all right.
I'm presuming that this is, I guess, some of the issue or concern. So what we're looking at here with these images are taken, at least the ones in the top, are taken from the northwest quadrant. So kind of just looking at that stop bar from the side of the road for the southbound movement. And I guess the thing to really be looking at are these little cuts in the road that you can see, and then these lines that are coming from the vertices of those rectangles in the street. So this would be a detector here, so you can see that detector, and then over here for that right turn lane, there's also another detector. I guess the one thing you'll notice on the two is that one is set more forward than the other. This one in the left turn, and through the left turn lane, I should say, that one is set forward just a little bit. I was not around at the time when these were cut in, but typically what happens is you'll put this one, if your pull box is off to the side, you know, where you're running your wires into the controller, you typically will put the one that's furthest away and stagger them slightly so that you can cut that wire in without getting too close to these other cracks and creating other issues with the pavement cracking because of those joints. So that's probably the reason why that was cut in the way it is. It does go ahead of where the stop bar is. That's actually a customary practice that we use to go over the stop bar, because what we've found out from watching traffic is that most traffic usually goes ahead of that stop bar, not behind it. So that's what you see here in these images. So the DOT had asked us, and I guess to get back to the senator, which really kind of comes back to here anyway, is if this was a common practice for us to detect vehicles, and it is. I mean, we use multiple forms of detection. This one happens to be what we call loop detection. Others that we use, actually really it's only one other type, which is video. And that's not being used here. With video, you have the option of moving around these zones, and they're literally just drawn in on an image. So in a case like this, if we wanted to move that detector around, it's really easy on video. When you are dealing with infrastructure in the pavement that's cut in, you're left with what you have. The only thing you can really do in a situation like this is add more detectors. I guess that's really all I have about this item, other than it is standard on where we have it. Could you add more detectors in this case? It could be done. We do have limitations on when we can do that, based off of time of year, road conditions, weather conditions, and when the equipment is available, because we need two different items. We need the sock available. It's obviously used for many different operations within public works, so we have to basically schedule time to use that, and then there's a different type of blade on it, so that gets switched out. And then also when our crack sealing crews are in place, because there's a kettle machine that has to heat up the tar basically to put that in, so that usually doesn't get fired up till June of every year. So we do have a kind of a short window when we do any sort of loop detector work within the city, and again, it's based off of weather and it's based off of availability of the equipment that we have. So that's all I really have.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Tom Duane, Alderman District 2. Can you go back to the first one? What Dave was just showing you is really still a big problem for us. Dave was right. We spent pretty good part of a day trying to fix that, making sure it was right, because people were complaining about it. They actually had their sign up on back of the McCullough Park Neighborhood Association as you enter that turn on there, with a sign to move up far enough. And since it has been taken down, and so recently, getting the calls and being on the McCullough Association News Press, what do you call that?
The Facebook page?
Yeah, Facebook page, thank you. And so I went out there, and sure enough, people aren't going far enough. So they're beeping, they're backed way up, and they got to run up to the front, tell the guy to move ahead, or they're not. It's not going to change. And and I explained to them, because a lot of people are trying to take a left on up there, and they'll get one car, maybe two, and it's non-existent already. It goes, and if it's wrong time of day, that thing will not change unless, because if the amount of traffic, if there's a lot of traffic coming east and west on East Mason, it stays red for a long time. Another thing I want to point out is there's no pedestrian crossing there, and so it's multiple things. So people that try to get across and there's no crosswalk or bicycle, because there's no a lot of time, there's not enough time to get through there. Sometimes that becomes a problem, but the biggest problem now is Mike's Bakery is really going to be adding a lot of traffic. It's right here. Can you point to it where Mike's Bakery is? That corner is Mike Bakery's building right now, and so that's just going to really generate more traffic, more and more traffic. And so I'm looking, because of that, now is an opportunity to fix a lot of these other small problems. I was hoping that we could add another detector or a different kind of detector up there so it would detect it better, because unless you really get up there, it doesn't work. And a lot of these people stay way behind that line and they wait for their traffic there. And I don't know why that is, but it happens on a regular basis. I think it's really, potentially, now that Mike's there, it's gonna become a larger problem. So I'm looking at, me and Dave talk a lot on this, and he's an expert at this and what to do, but I think now with that change, and now is the time to make other changes to get this done right, and all the facets of this thing. So, I'm asking your committee to take a good look at this, and if you could open the floor, I have a gentleman here that would like to talk to you too. Is that okay?
Certainly.
Thank you.
All right, 1 second, we'll call you here. So, you got any questions before we?
Just a couple of things to add, just I guess some clarifications. Getting back to that detection pattern, as you saw, there was 2 detectors, right? So there's that one in the southbound right lane, so right where you see this arrow, just south of there. There's actually a detector for the right turn movement. What we do in a situation, we put what we call a delay on those, meaning that we know that obviously that traffic can take a right on red, but we don't want it to trip the signal right away if there's other traffic that's on Mason Street. So we put what's called a delay on it, typically 10 to 20 seconds on them. So if there's a vehicle that sits on it, it holds that call, and after that time expires, it puts the call into the controller to actually turn the signal green. So even though that those vehicles are southbound, it can actually still trip the through movement. So you got more than one detector that can do it. They just operate a little bit differently. But that doesn't mean that, the guy in the middle of the night, if he doesn't pull up and there's no other southbound right turn traffic, or when traffic is light, that he potentially could not trigger that signal, and it could be read indefinitely like was described. So go ahead.
Is there a max out time on Mason Street?
Yes.
What's that?
I don't know off the top of my head. I didn't actually look into that, but typically on a signal like this, our max timer would be in the realm of 35 to 50 seconds.
So within a minute, it's turning red anyway?
Well, you also have the northbound movement, I guess you'd say. These, I guess that's a good point too, because these, the north and the south, work on what's called a split phase operation, meaning that you don't get a common green between northbound and southbound. One movement goes, then the other movement goes. That's done because there's 2 left turns out of the business park, and then that basically makes it so you can't make 2 lefts. They're conflicting, they potentially could hit each other. So we had the split phases. So it's not the most efficient of operations, but that's somewhat built into the geometry that's there. And the northbound does go first. We typically, depending on the operation, if it runs free like this, which it's not in what we call a coordination pattern with other upstream and downstream signals, we will operate the highest movement first. So in this case, it makes sense to have the business park traffic go first, because there's going to be more delay on that movement. So I'll add that to, just more on the signal operations, and relative to any of the other items, like with the bakery going in, will that add traffic? Sure, I would think it's going to generate some amount of traffic. I don't know how much that's going to really change here. Once that goes in, if we modify the timing, yeah, that just makes sense to take a look at it, and if there's issues there, we could just bump up that max timer. It's not a big deal. It's normally how we time signals anyway. If the higher the demand, we'll increase that time. With respect to the ped movements and so forth, not necessarily directly related to the request, but I know that there's been discussion in the past about adding sidewalks in this area, and it's something that I think would certainly benefit the area, but I think it's a pretty large project to move forward with, because you have a lot of sidewalks that would need to be installed that lead into both the business park and into the neighborhoods. You'd have crossing improvements at the signal, which could be done, but it would be something where we would have to add what we call ped stations for the push buttons and everything. So it's a project. no doubt about it, it certainly could be done, but it's going to take basically a project through Public Works and have the Improvement Service Committee approve of the infrastructure project itself.
Just one question. Did you say there was a sign there encouraging cars to move forward and it's no longer there?
The Alder actually did mention that. There is, if you see on here, this little circle,
Okay.
that's actually a neighborhood association sign. A lot of the neighborhood associations, well, actually all of them, they get a sign once they become one, and it's up to them to place it and maintain it. McAuliffe Neighborhood approached us, I believe it was years ago actually, to place that sign in the median there. So they did so successfully. There's a hold harmless agreement that's on file with the city for them to have that within city right of way, private sign. The thing on the back, that's not a city sign, if that's what you're asking. We didn't put anything up there like that. So if it was put up, it was not put up by the city.
So the association put it up, some signs,
Yeah.
telling people to move forward? Okay.
Yeah. My guess is, and I mean, our crews are well informed that if there is a non-compliant sign or a non-city sign, that they're ordered to take it down.
Okay.
So if it was taken down, that's
That's probably what happened. So if somebody put it up, but the
Yeah.
city took it down because it shouldn't have been there.
Right, yeah. And that would not be part of the hold harmless agreement. The hold harmless agreement would be, and the approval for that sign is just for the neighborhood
The front of
sign.
the
So if
sign.
there was something on the back and it got taken down, that's standard operations for us.
The problem is, like in the morning and at night when they're coming and going back and forth to work, they see that sign, but they think they gotta stop at that one, there's a stripe there. They think they can't go past that, and so they don't. They think, like any walkway or any city street, they have these lines where you're not supposed to pass them, because you gotta wait for pedestrians to walk and all that stuff. So they literally don't.
Okay, so
And
it's
I've
worse to
watched
have the
this for
sign.
quite a
then.
bit, yeah.
Okay, all right. Maybe we'll, Commissioner, now we'll open it up to the gentleman who wants to speak then.
So moved.
Motion been made to open the floor, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, sir, if you want to come up and state your name and your address and.
Thank you.
We'll give
Yeah,
thank
John
you.
Crabb. I'm live at 505 Larry Lane. And I'm also represent the McAuliffe Park Neighborhood Association. So yeah, just a lot of stuff was already discussed. Once this issue more with Uncle Mike's kind of going in, there's been a lot more discussion regarding the increased traffic and stuff like that in the neighborhood. There's been other concerns as far as like being able to get out and the timing of the lights and stuff, which was already discussed. Kind of like Alderman Dwayne said, with that stop line there, it does happen where people don't get up far enough to activate that sensor, and as you saw in the previous pictures, that line does cut right in the middle of it. So I have a motorcycle which there's some sensors that will sense it, some that don't. So I think there might be enough metal or something that has to be there in order to activate it. So I'm kind of guessing that if somebody isn't pulled up enough, that the sensor's not seeing that there is a vehicle there to trigger the lights. And it's happened where you could see the changing going northbound a couple times and stuff, and now people are waiting longer and stuff. So that was a concern. I'm thinking possibly something, to make that like a solution there on East Mason on the in the median going into the neighborhood. There is a stop here on red sign with the little arrow pointing down to like where the sensor is. I'm thinking that could be a solution to that point, because part of it is some people don't want to move up past that white line, but it's also really close to the edge of the curb, so you're getting really close to the intersection. So I think that kind of concerns people as far as moving that up. If they had a sign there just saying stop here on red, I believe that could help people to look there and activate the sensor. As far as the sign goes too, the signage on there is just a banner, just a small banner on the back of that neighborhood sign that says, in order to activate lights, pull up. It's still, but it is hard to see because people don't always read that as going up beyond, and it's not a, the city sign like on the other median would be. And there is also concern, that there is no sidewalk and stuff, but really there's nothing to activate the lights if you're a pedestrian or if you're on a bicycle. And that there's culverts right over there. There's a theater. We've seen it where kids are darting, down the road a little bit. They're trying to get across into the industrial park there for whatever reasoning. And this is the closest one to intersection to those businesses. If there's something there to even activate the lights, even if there isn't a sidewalk in there, to at least activate that and give people a chance to get across, because there are a lot of kids in the neighborhood, and there is discussion of actually expanding on the north side of Huron, or Sitka Street. They want to redevelop that and build add more houses into that. So we're only growing as it comes up, and if this is one of the major intersections, need to be looking at increasing that time that people can get out and increasing that flow, as well as making accommodations for those that are on bicycles or walking. So I think those are pretty much the bigger points that, like I said, most of the stuff has already been discussed. So that's it. So
Okay, thank you, sir.
John, could I get your last name again, please?
Sure, Crabbe, C-R-A-B-B-E.
C-R-A-B-B-E. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I want to point out, Dave really tried to help me out there with that stoppage on right where the arrow is up there. We spent a long time there. We thought we had it solved, but it never really did. I mean, it's still been a problem ever since. They don't go far enough, so I don't know if there's something else they can do. But if you can tie that in with doing that with Uncle Mike's and all that, it's just something to look at.
Okay. All right, we should have a motion to
I'll
go back.
make a
Thank you.
motion to return to regular business.
Second.
Motion made second, back to regular business. All approved, or all in favor? Approved. Is this gotta relate to, I mean, if we were to do something here, would INS have to be involved with, you're looking at doing something with the intersections? It sounds like what I've got hearing possibly need to be done.
Again, that's a little beyond, I think, what the actual request is. It certainly could become a request.
Okay.
To look at, say, a sidewalk study in this area. There's no doubt. I mean, you got development on the east, or on the north side and the south side. I could probably take a look to see what we have. Actually, I think I do have the traffic count, which would include ped counts. Let's see, Mason Challenger. We can just kind of see, I guess, what kind of ped counts that we have here. So northbound and southbound, so you'll see here under the peds, you'll see what we have. So this count was done July 7th, 2014, so a little older, but actually I think we had them done last year, but we're in the process of processing all of our counts right now in the winter from last counting season.
But those wouldn't be too high because you don't have the sidewalks there.
But sure, sidewalk presence, does that encourage walking? Of course, but it doesn't prevent it. I mean, when we do sidewalk studies, and sometimes when we find the need, we'll find that beaten path that shows that pedestrians are there. So it's not necessarily a build it and they will come. A lot of times pedestrian facilities are built based off of demand, and the infrastructure is just not in place for them. Happens all the time.
And we can't put in crosswalks though until there's sidewalks.
Correct. Yeah. We just can't place lines. I mean, that's usually the proverbial request. Can we just at least put in crosswalk markings? You need to have the push buttons. You need to have the countdown timers. You need to have ADA style ramps because you need to have a receiving end for the crosswalks. Otherwise, it's non-ADA compliant, and obviously we could get in trouble if we were audited for that. So you need to have the infrastructure in place before an actual official crosswalk is designated.
Sure that
And
that's-
you want to put the timers in or the push buttons without the crosswalks.
Right.
It's kind of the whole package.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a detection system for those.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Some parts of Green Bay, especially in my area, because I don't have sidewalks, they have pads on the corner where the city takes care of what's up, and then they have the push button for them to get across. So I don't know if that's something you can do. I mean, there's no sidewalks, but there's a pad there. They make a pad for a pedestrian to stand on, or someone on their bike, or with, come around, they can wait. But then they can push the button to get that cross time.
But I think all that has to go through INS, right, because of the crosswalks, the pads.
It's a two-step process. The study would basically demonstrate the need. That's done by observing the pedestrian and bicycle patterns that exist. Again, 14 is, we're coming up on 4 years on that data, but we're processing those counts, and, we can get updated counts if need be this summer, with development with Mike's. And, as was alluded to as well, that there's some new development going in off Sitka. And if that all generates foot traffic, then it does. And then if the demand is there, the sidewalk study will make a recommendation for the sidewalks. That's the one thing I think that we do well in traffic, is we try not looking at it from a cost perspective, but more of a need basis, and then the costs are derived after that.
Question, Dave, do we know if the loop is working? Because I know sometimes the wires get cracked and the weight doesn't work.
Right.
Because it should work, even if a car's only on half of the loop, it still should trip the
Well,
loop.
I can tell you it's gotta be working, because otherwise I probably would have gotten a call today on it, because, we have probably over the course of the day hundreds of vehicles, so if it wasn't working, we wouldn't be getting green lights. Other than with the delay situation I was talking about, that right turn lane. I'll be frank in looking at that. I think the overlap is probably a little excessive. It's either, I got a feeling what happened was that stop bar was painted after that loop went in, and it just happened to kind of split it. The common overlap that we have is 4 feet. That's what we'll use, is 4 feet over a stop bar. Those are 15-foot loops, so you're probably looking at double the amount of overlap that we normally would use. And quite frankly, like when I do, we've been doing video ever since I've been here. It's just now coming on 12 years. And I like video for a lot of different reasons for something like this. This would be a very simple fix for us to just draw on a loop and it's a done deal. And quite frankly, that's the way that I do detection zones on all of our side streets, is I like to double them up, because I like a longer detection zone. I think it works for a better operation of the signal. So in this case, to be quite frank, I really have no issues with adding a second one. It's just that we're going to have constraints on the timing of it, of when we can install it. We're not going to probably be able to realistically install it till June.
Mr. Chairman, there's a timing issue of installing anything, and the request really is on behalf of the Neighborhood Association to evaluate the situation. So I would move number 3 with the understanding that the traffic engineer will take a look at this and come back with a recommendation. So that would be my motion.
Yeah, to be quite frank, I think we can actually make a recommendation right here.
Okay.
I would say add the loop, and then when it comes down to the timing, that we evaluate the timings once this new development is up and running.
Okay.
And I can't do that until we actually got
And
actual
they'll
new cars
understand that
running.
it's going to be coming up in the summer, because obviously they'll know they can't do it now.
Yeah.
But that would be great.
I'll be quite frank, this kind of stuff I can do pretty quick, and what will happen is basically, I'll go out there once the loop is cut, because I'll mark the loop location. I'll usually pre-mark it, then the electricians go out there and they'll do the final marking, then the operations crew comes out, they saw it, they put it in, and then I'll time it with them. And when I time it is when I would probably be looking at then, with the new development. So we kind of just take care of it with one fell swoop. If that development is, to be quite honest, I don't know, maybe you guys know a little bit better than I do when it's actually going to be open. Is it open now, or?
There's a sign on the building that says March.
March, yeah.
In March,
It's
okay.
March, yeah.
So
So, second Dave's motion that he went through Dan on, whatever.
Refer to staff to evaluate,
Oh, so you just.
refer to staff to do as you say,
Okay,
all right? Make it easy, move this thing along.
sure.
Good enough, Alderman Dwayne?
Thank you.
Okay. Our motion made,
Second.
seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Just a brief announcement, since our last meeting with the Neighborhood Association here, announcing that I took on another responsibility, high paid. I'm going to be the new chair of the Green Bay Neighborhood Leadership Council, which is the umbrella organization of all 42 neighborhood associations that meets once a month. So another responsibility, but it's for the pay, so just want you to know
Good
that.
man. Congratulations.
Or sympathy.
Our sympathy. 4, consideration with possible action on the request of Alderman Dwayne to install a left turn signal on Alpine Drive to East Mason Street.
Mr. Chairman, can I interrupt? I have to go home and get dressed and get back here. But could you hold mine up until I get back here in about 35, 40 minutes, please?
Do that, or
Sure.
how many you got?
I only
Just
have one.
Tom, would you care if we moved
Take them
here?
right now.
Are you sure?
Martin paused.
Well, that's awful nice.
Yeah.
I'm not
I'll go
requesting
downstairs
that.
and do my other one.
All right, if that's
You
okay.
got two- you got another one on here yet?
Yeah, so
I
number
do.
11, I guess, right?
I
No,
do?
Alderman Dwayne, you got two more to go.
Right,
4 and 5?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll let him go first.
all right. If you're not back,
Well,
we'll
that's
go
awful
Alderman
nice.
Alderman Galvin.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so
11?
6.
Or is it 6?
6.
we're gonna skip
Leave
over
it number
4 and go to
six.
6.
Yeah, I'm looking at a different agenda here.
Ready?
Yep.
Consideration with possible action on the request by Alderman Nicholson to have a 4-way stop control intersection at Cass and John Street.
At this point in time, we don't have any sort of traffic count data that's been collected at this intersection. As you can see on here, just to kind of give you some context, you got East Mason Street, which is 2 blocks to the north, and then you have Bellevue Street, which is 1 block to the east. This location, or just kind of this whole neighborhood in this area, I know over the years, and I've worked with Andy on this too, where there's referrals from some of the concerned neighbors there relative to cut-through traffic, some of it being trucks, like in construction season and so forth, and I believe that there was a beer delivery truck that I believe was coming through here before, because deliveries to this bar in the corner, which I think we didn't really come to a resolution on that, other than that was really the only way that they could load, so it wasn't really anything we could do to help that person, but anyway, relative to that, like I said, we don't have any traffic volumes at this time to actually conduct a warrant study. That would have to be something that we'd have to put into our workflow once we are back into our counting season. Usually we like to do our counting in the warm season so we can capture pedestrian traffic, bike traffic and everything. I did look real briefly at crash history. I didn't really see anything there. I said low in here, meaning that probably means that we had, one crash every other year, and outside of the 5-year window, because our crash history goes back into like 08, 09, and if I just see a few in there, that's actually pretty admirable to have that low crash history. So other than that, that's the history that I have. Obviously, the Alder, this is his request, and I'm sure he'd like to speak on behalf of this request.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. I put this request in on behalf of a resident that lives in the area. And he's been there for a number of years, and he sees high volume of vehicles. I mean, compared to Mason Street, no. But he does see a high volume of cars over the years, vehicles over the years, that have been cutting through and basically not going the speed limit. And he is concerned. So he wanted me to put a request in for a stop sign just to slow some of the traffic down that goes through. That's basically it. That's the gist.
Alder Gelman has a question
Oh,
or comment.
Well, I have a comment too, if that's possible.
go ahead.
Actually, that's my district, and I've talked to Dave about the complaints. That entire area from the East River to Bellevue, I've had complaints from residents on all those streets that they use those streets as a cut-through because of the way traffic backs up at Mason and Bellevue. It'll back up all the way to the East River sometimes, the eastbound traffic will. And so you'll have vehicles going eastbound that will use all those streets there as a cut-through. And I've had complaints, tons of them. I did talk to Dave. Dave said to have, what was it called, Dave? That the residents would have to get a petition signed.
I think we had talked about the neighborhood traffic calming program, which
Right.
that requires signatures and
And
buy-in from the neighborhood.
I had talked to the neighborhood association. told them what they had to do to get it up and running. They said they would do it, but apparently it's fallen by the wayside. Be that as it may, I still continue to get complaints. And you're looking at streets, you've got parked cars on it, you've got children playing, there's a park, large park area down there. And with all that going on, 25 miles an hour, you've got frustrated people who obviously aren't going 25 miles an hour, and they're not necessarily being totally attentive to pedestrians and bicyclists and other goings on. So, you know, I understand too that stop signs aren't to be used to slow traffic down. That's not what stop signs are designed for, but that's what everybody wants them for, because you can't have a cop on every corner. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know if there's something that's more involved that would have to take place. But I'm not sure what we keep telling the people. Hey, there's nothing we can do, live with it. Something has to be done. I mean, because the complaints aren't going away. And it's different people that are calling and complaining. It's not the same, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 residents. It's multiple people over a period of time.
All right.
Now, that is a very congested area, a lot of speeding, because I've gone through there many times, and it's a real problem. I'm not sure if there's physical things we can do to solve that problem. I think it's more of a law enforcement problem. In this particular intersection, you're only really kind of a block from the intersection of Mason and Bellevue, and I can tell you they really scoot down. As soon as they get through that major intersection going south, they're going pretty good clip.
Right, but the law enforcement issue becomes, then we have to assign an officer there every day during those time frames. And say you put one out there every day for 6 months, so everyone kind of gets used to a cop being there. Cop goes away, gets assigned to another area, has other things to do. After a while, you're gonna be right back at the same thing. I'm more inclined to think there's more of an engineering, something that can be done from an engineering point than from just total law enforcement.
I think that's what the traffic calming policy is for.
Exactly.
And that, so if the neighborhood doesn't want to take the initiative to follow up on the traffic calming, that's a little bit on them. But if there's no control there right now, I'd be okay with studying it to see what the warrants are, or to see how close or how far away from the warrants they are, so we can defend the decision not to put a stop sign in.
But the one thing that I'm hearing that's the core of this whole discussion is speeding. And that, to me, is the core of the neighborhood traffic calming policy. I think that we could probably come to an agreement between staff and the neighbors in that we could go ahead and make the observations without the petition, without the signatures, to at least collect the speeds. Because the last thing that I think that any of us here would want to do would be to place an engineering measure that's not warranted, such as a stop sign at a location or in an area that doesn't have a documented speeding problem. I know that there's anecdotal evidence, and of course, you know, there's this belief that that's happening. The engineer, obviously, and he says, let's see it. Show me the evidence. So, and that's what we do. We collect this data. We do it in many different locations, and that certainly could be done without the neighborhood traffic calming policy and the signatures. We can, and by a motion of this commission, we can certainly move forward, install those road tubes, get the data back, and let's find out what it says. I guess the second point that I have is, again, I'm not as familiar with this intersection. I've driven through there a number of times, but the stop condition currently, it's a two-way stop, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And which street stops for which street?
East-west.
So the east-west stops?
Yep.
So you've got one block going east and west, then there's a stop, and then they go another block, and then there's another stop. So the speeding's obviously not on Cass, correct?
No, it's not on Cass.
Okay, so it's on John Street. John north-south. So with that being said, it sounds to me like the speed survey should be done on John Street, not Cass. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds right.
Okay.
Well, with that understanding, Mr. Chairman, I'd move we accept the recommendation of the engineer.
Refer to staff.
For speed study of John Street?
Yep.
There a second?
Second?
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Just got a question, how long will that take? Roughly, Dave?
We gotta wait till, again, I sound like a.
Spring, summer?
Yeah, we can't
Okay.
do it in the wintertime because of the snow plows.
Right.
But once the weather warms up, I can get them out, in the springtime, once I'm guaranteed there shouldn't be any snow, April probably.
Okay. Fair enough.
Usually what I do is I throw them out for a week, so we can
Yep.
get weekend and weekday data, and then I can summarize it
Fair enough.
very
Thank
easily,
you.
bring it back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we had a motion was made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries. Alderman Dwayne back, so let's move ahead to number 7, which Alderman Gelman said to receive and place on file till next year, Dave, so,
Number 7?
yeah, number 7.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
You got everything you need then, Dave? Any questions on that
For this one? Nope.
for number 7?
No, that was going to be my recommendation based off of a current plan that's actually being approved tonight at the school district right now. They're approving the contract for the Safe Routes for Non-Drivers plan for the school district and the citywide plan, so. That
Okay.
is probably going to answer a majority of the questions that would be part of this study if it were recommended to staff.
All right, thank you. Move to number 8, consideration of possible action on the request by Alderman Galvin that the city develop a plan to increase safety on our roadways for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Do you want me to go first then on this? I just have a few things to
Yeah.
say. So as we know, as we kind of even talked about it this last item about, sometimes there's engineering improvements, sometimes there's enforcement improvements. We've talked a lot about the 3 E's over the years. One of the things that you find out overall is that there's actually been 2 more E's that have been added to the 3 E's. That would be evaluation and encouragement. That was really brought home to me when we were making our selections and actually putting even going back, the RFP documents for the Safe Routes plan, and then going through the interview process with these consultants. So you're finding that there's actually now an emphasis on the evaluation part, which can be part of the engineering, but they're taking it out saying that we need to evaluate situations and say that if there's applications that are made for improvement, to evaluate, see if they're working still. So the evaluation part, I think, is actually a good one that's been added to the mix, and certainly is one I think that as a city we should look at and move forward with, as well as the encouragement. The encouragement is kind of, in my opinion, wrapped into the education part of it, but just encouraging good behavior. That all starts out sometimes even at the neighborhood association level, where there are problems within the neighborhoods, and oftentimes, and Dan, you probably know this, being president of the neighborhood association, that a lot of times those problems are drive within that neighborhood. It's just the neighbors are driving fast because it's not a cut-through street. It's just those people that access that area. I just had one that was in an old outlet area. It's like, well, who else is using that but the people that live there? Really, I mean, there is no other people that come through there, so it's like, start at that part. That's the encouragement part. So I think that we certainly need to be addressing the 5 E's from here on out as a city, than just limiting ourselves to the 3 E's. The other thing that I certainly want to address is just to reaffirm that when we are moving forward with capital improvement projects, which I include our traffic signal repair program, where we're going through and upgrading traffic signals. This isn't done just necessarily because we have failing infrastructure, or older infrastructure. I mean, I could tell you that some of the controls that even at like Mason and Challenger may not be as old as some of the projects that we've done. And part of that reason is that there's a safety component to it. We know that or we've identified that there may be some crash problems, there may be safety issues, there might be bike ped needs at those locations. Therefore, they're added to the mix. For example, even in 2018, we're moving forward with a a small improvement even over at Broadway Dousman, which we know is part of the farmers market activities of the summer. We know that there's high pedestrian activity, and there's a great fluctuation in that traffic, and that's a prime example of a location that we're doing that improvement based off of a safety need. So these factors do get certainly prioritized within our project and infrastructure program. So I guess really that's what I wanted to capitalize on, is that these items are inclusive in consideration of projects at the public works level. Obviously, these projects need to get approved by committee and ultimately council, so sometimes not all projects come to fruition based off of the motions and recommendations of council. And again, as I said in the last item, we are embarking on a safe routes. It's not a safe route to school. A lot of times people are referring to this as a safe route to school. It's more than a safe routes to school. It's a safe route to school and for non-drivers plan. We specifically changed the name when we put the RFP out there because we knew that we were putting this all in together, as in we're looking at this from a citywide perspective, not just schools. Schools is certainly a component to it. We've even expanded that out to the high schools, and every school that's within the Green Bay Area Public Schools district and jurisdiction, 38 schools, they are part of that, but this is even goes above and beyond that, looking at non-school areas as well for non-drivers. So with that, I guess my point is overall is that I believe that not only we incorporate these items in, but I think we've already started to take that next step with this overall non-driver safe routes plan.
Okay. Go ahead, Alvin, do you want to?
Sure, thank you. What I'm asking for is something more than what we normally do. We wait till someone comes in and complains about there's a speeding problem in this area, there's something going on here, something over there, and we get out the sniper rifle and we take a shot at that area. And maybe we kind of solve the problem, maybe we don't. What I'm asking for is the city to commit itself to much more even than just the safe routes to school. What I'm asking for the city to do is set up a comprehensive plan, much like the OWI enforcement. You see, OWI enforcement, there's public service announcements, there's educational programs taking place, there's media coverage, and there's enforcement action that takes place. And I'm asking for even more than that. How many of you are aware of the bicycle program that was kicked off last year for 6 months? All the buses were plastered with signs. There were posters in the lobby of this building and several other public buildings. It was share and be aware. You know, was the city involved with that? Not really, other than allowing them to put some of their signs up in city buildings. No involvement. And I'm asking the city to get more involved in with these programs. I'm asking for not only educational PSA announcements, but the city get involved with bike rodeos to train kids at a young level about how to operate their bikes safely. And when I was young, we had a community that was very bike oriented. There was a lot of education. There was enforcement. I was a victim of that because of my decision to ride double with my buddy, and I spent the summer writing the bicycle laws. We used to have a police lieutenant that was assigned to bicycle court, and the department did away with that years ago. We have ordinances on hand that if you'd ask the officers what they are, they wouldn't know what they are, and they wouldn't know what's enforceable, unenforceable. And I think there's been over the years, we've gotten away from this education, enforcement, and to some extent engineering. And I think we need to rededicate our community to that as we try to encourage people to move here or stay here, and we're encouraging more pedestrian action, more bicycle action. But you see an increase in car pedestrian accidents, you see an increase in car bike accidents, there's an increase statewide fatalities involving both those areas. And I'm not just looking at motor vehicles, I'm looking at everyone has a responsibility. The bicyclist has a responsibility to follow the traffic laws. And I'm sure if we asked Brad to take a look at the records over the last 5 years, How many bicyclists have been even stopped and warned or cited for infractions, which we know irritates motorists? Same thing with pedestrians. There are places to cross and not cross the street, and there's ways to behave in traffic. And so, from that point, I'm asking for a educational process to be put in that the city gets involved in. From engineering, there's, you'll saw it on here, and I received and placed on file, marking crosswalks and doing a better job of marking our crosswalks. If you've been on Webster Street, you see where they have actual flashing signs now for Webster Street for Bellin and St. Vincent's staff and patients, and that to be going back and forth. But we had a huge failure at the intersection of Hartung and Mason Street. We had a big overhead sign, and when you wanted to cross the street, you push a button and yellow flashing lights would go on, and all the motorists were supposed to stop. Motorists didn't even know what they were for. We even had an officer who didn't know what it was for, and a guy pushed it, and he went blowing right through the intersection, and when the guy was yelling at him, the officer waved back at him. And he didn't know he was supposed to stop. And so the neighbor said, why have this up here? You give people a false sense of security, someone's gonna get hit, so they pull that crossing down. So I mean, there's a lot more that can be done. And I don't wanna just wait for the study, which will be done, what, next year?
The timeline on that is, it's pretty aggressive. It's actually, I believe, the advisory committee is already getting together here in February. It's gonna be late 18, early 2019 completion.
Okay, so when it's done in 2019, then we look at the results, and then we start formulating a plan, and we start putting the money aside, and then it's 2020, 2021, and what have we gotten in between? So I'm asking for staff to start putting together a comprehensive program. We do Frogger, which is, we got a kid across the street. We look to see if people obey the law. I know that we've done, CSIs go out and will do traffic studies with a radar gun, send letters to the owners of the vehicles, hey, your vehicle was observed exceeding the speed limit, there's no citation involved, but it's more of an education and encouragement. But I'd like to see a plan, not just the police department doing something, not just DPW, but all the city staff getting involved in putting this plan together. And it's something that we just don't do for a couple of months and then it goes away and everyone forgets about it until someone else complains. But it's something kind of like the OWI enforcement, where they have in advance, a year in advance, they have set all the deployments and all the public information that they're going to be putting out over a period of time. So it just doesn't fade away from our memory. And there's a lot of organizations out there. Michelle Baucus from one of the bike organizations. There's grant money out there to put on bike rodeos. There's grant money out there to do a lot of other things. The Active Green Bay, what is that?
Active Communities Alliance.
You're right. That's a big organization of mostly bicyclists, but also pedestrian. Live, what is it?
Live 5428.
Right, is all involved with that. And they're all involved with getting on board. So it's not just the city would be doing it by itself, but I think if we hooked up with some of these organizations, we could put something together that would really benefit not just this community, but maybe the entire area, and make it a lot better for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists to get along and reduce these incidents and these complaints and have more respect for everybody.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Alder, I'm not sure if this commission has the wherewithal to do what you'd like to do.
I understand.
I'm wondering if this commission, however, should take a look at forming a citizen focus group to get some ideas down pat that can be brought back to the city council and this commission. What I'm hearing from you is that you want a more comprehensive approach, in particular an educational and promotion approach to the issue.
Yeah, a plan, something that isn't on a complaint-only basis, but something that the police department knows we're going to do 20 Frogger deployments all over the city. Okay, it's not just at this one spot, but it's all over the community. That there's going to be signs put up on a regular basis, that I don't know which department would put on bike rodeos, that we're going to get bicycles licensed. Every bike is supposed to be licensed in the city of Green Bay. We have free licenses, but there are no bikes with licenses on them. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things going on, and you can sit and look out this window, as I've sat sometimes when I'm at protection and welfare. I watch bicyclists blowing through stop signs, going the wrong way on one-way streets. I mean, so it's, like I said before, I think you're right. And I don't think it's just this committee, but, you know, I can go to INS and they're gonna kind of shift me over here and over there. And, you know, with that organization that we were talking about before, they might be the ones to go to. I know I've talked to them about it, and they're very much aware and involved with the Safe Routes program. But I'd like to see the city be some of the driving force here, in moving this forward. It's for our community.
Go ahead, Dan.
When I hear of a large overall plan for the city, this, to me, I mean, just being a staff person, I see this as almost kind of like coming as a function from chief of staff, mayor level. He's meeting with all the department heads to actually talk about this, because he's right, this isn't just a public works thing, because we're only one of the 5 Es. It's not an enforcement, police department, it's only one of the 5 Es. This is gonna take multiple departments to cooperate and to implement. And unless you have something cohesive, as in who's overseeing all of those departments, I don't think you're ever gonna get it off the ground. So getting the mayor's office involved and having the mayor basically meet with these department heads to talk about what Mr. Galvin is referring to, I think that's the only way you're ever gonna get it to actually get off the ground. We need, in essence, you need your orders, you know? The mayor's gonna delegate to Mr. Grenier, to Chief Smith, et cetera, down the line, saying, look, I want you guys to put together a plan, you come back to me, and then we'll get it approved at whatever committee is going to be designated that task, whether it be traffic, bicycle, pedestrian commission. I see no reason why it couldn't come from here, because this is just a venue or a vehicle to council to approve.
I think it's gotta start at the council level. I mean,
I think it needs to start at the mayor's.
The mayor's
That-
level,
That's my
the council.
opinion. Again, I'm
I
only one
agree with
person
everything you're
here,
saying.
I agree. I
no,
think
no
that's
doubt,
good.
it's just
It's
how to
a big
implement it.
pie
Yeah.
to put together, and
Yeah.
I understand it's, I imagine Dave sitting there going, oh man, and Brad's going, oh Jesus, Bill, you know? But it's something that, you know, we used to have in this community. And as the city got busier and busier, some of this stuff seems minor and it falls by the wayside, but it impacts us. And I'm not sure what the recommendation would be. We kind of sound like we're bouncing, you know, we're close to it. I don't know if we refer this to the mayor's office.
Well,
Some-
let me,
Sometimes I've seen this too, and Bill, that you're an alder, maybe this is something that you could do. I've seen requests to council on the whole. I've seen those types of
Okay.
requests before, because this isn't gonna be just a public works effort, or a police department, or community economic development. It's not gonna just be that one. There needs to be someone, and maybe that's council, because this is, just like anything else, it's gonna cost money. And I don't think anyone's gonna deny that.
No.
So council would have to actually approve of those funds, how they get split into the, well, now we're already into the 18 budget, which was approved months ago. It'd have to be something that either gets, for lack of a better term, I'm an engineer, change ordered into the 18 budget, or gets put in when it comes down to June, July, August, when all those numbers are starting to get put together for the 19 budget, it gets put in for that. But discussion, he's right, it should be now in order to get and fit into the timeline for that type of an approval. But it really kind of has to come from council and or the mayor's office to delegate to those department heads to do this.
Mr. Chairman, with the indulgence of the alder, I'm wondering if a recommendation from this commission to the mayor and to the city council to form a focus group made up of citizens, like people that you recommended before that are associated with these bike groups, and departments of the city of Green Bay, to have a focus group to come up with a plan to come back to this commission, come back to the mayor and the city council. I would like to see that occur tonight as at least a starting point to get these discussions going, and that would be my recommendation.
Is that a motion?
That'd be a motion.
Motion.
Is that in agreement with you, Bill?
Yeah,
My only concern is, in my world, focus group is like 1 or 2 meetings. I wonder if that Because I think we're looking for something more
I
sustainable.
just, you know, it's gonna involve so many departments. This is not gonna be just a traffic. You guys may have to approve certain parts of the master plan once it's together. The DPW will have to, you know, have to be approved on many different levels, so, I'll be honest with you,
You have another name for it?
I feel like I'm fumbling a little bit here, but, you know,
Do we have a task force? We
Well-
probably can't
Well,
do that,
let's
that's probably the
call
mayor.
it, let's
Yeah.
call it a task force. I have no
Something.
Call
objection
whatever
to
you
that.
want it, but.
Yeah, that's,
Well,
we don't
I
have
think-
much power.
I think Dave hit it on the head, or maybe the alder, you know, coming from the mayor, getting all the departments head involved, and then they can formulate, you know, they might want to pull in the bike group on the bike issue. They might want to pull in zoning or whatever on the sidewalks, because you want to improve it for pedestrians. You put sidewalks in all the new subdivisions and then come back and retrofit the main arterials or whatever in the rest of the city. I think that's where it has to come from, is that, and then they have the power to pull in whatever players they want to formulate the best plan, instead of us saying to form a focus group. I kind of agree, a focus group is a couple meetings or whatever.
Well, let's call it a task force, if you
force.
will. But I guess my recommendation, Chuck, is simply to say that we would prefer that the mayor and the city council get moving and to form such a group as you had mentioned.
I agree.
So-
I think that's the way to go, refer to the mayor's office and the city council. I mean,
Right.
if you need somebody, mayor's almost gotta appoint somebody to be the advocate, be the point person who's gonna do it, because you have nobody backing it on. When they
Right.
come to work every day, that's their job, to figure it out. I think that's what you need, is a person to
So,
push it.
so I kind of hear a modification of what Dan had
Yeah.
proposed. So is this, do I understand this correct? That the motion really is modified now to refer to the mayor's office to create a task force to come up with recommendations for roadway and bicycle safety.
I think mayor's office, do you want to include the council? Common
And
council?
council?
And I would say, including the city departments and public members. I think we need to get public members
Yeah.
involved.
You know, do we know that whether there are transportation monies available, you know, in a grant form to do something like this, or should that be investigated as well? You know, if there is a source of funding to do a coordinated study, you know, maybe with a consultant, you know, it might be a way to get it going faster.
You know, that's an excellent suggestion. You know, Dave, you might want to check out, there's a you're on the committee, I think, the Brown County Law Enforcement Group.
Oh, no, that's the Crime Prevention Foundation of Brown County. It does give out grants. Usually, they total about $15,000 to $20,000 a year. They're only one-time grants. They don't do where they fund it from year to year to year. You get a one shot at it. And they have funded studies and things like that. They funded, they bought 10,000 bicycle licenses for the PD at one point, a few years back. They do their grants applications in April, and then they give them out in October of that same year. And I'm sure, I know from the Active Alliance, I'm a member of that. I'm going to be part of the Safe Routes Committee starting in February. There are monies out there. There's, in fact, a couple of the people, Peter Fluke, he's a retired police officer, he's big into bicycling and all that stuff. There's a lot of money that's available state and federal once you start establishing these organizations and these policies to increase your pedestrian and bicycle interaction with traffic. So maybe starting out, there may not be money, but I know that once they get up and running, there are monies for that, like that bike rodeo program. There's grant money out there for that. That, you know, whoever puts it on would have the money then to fund it and staff it and do it. So.
Yeah. So I would just offer a friendly amendment to add to the motion on the floor that to include research on possible grant funding.
I accept,
Funding
Okay.
sources.
I accept the,
You get the motion,
Friendly
Dave, that
amendment.
we're,
Oh, I'm writing it down.
okay. All right, so, motion been made.
Second.
We have a second. You need any more information from the Listen, Dave, before you leave.
I think I got it. I just said refer to Mayor's Office of Common Council to develop recommendations to increase bike and pedestrian safety to include research for grant funds.
And I can go to the mayor's office, David, if you want. I sat down 2 years ago and talked with them about this, and that's how I got in with the Active Alliance group, but, so they've got other irons in the fire with other things, other than just.
Right.
So that's what it really takes, is somebody who's gonna advocate it with the mayor's office, really.
Sure.
I mean, in my opinion, you gotta have somebody that's, you seem like a great proponent, because you got a lot of good information there that, but, you know, I don't wanna put it all on your shoulders either, because you got a life too, I think, but,
I'd be happy to join you too, for that
good.
visit if you're interested.
so.
Sure.
All right, so motion been made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's move down to 9, consideration with possible action on the request of Ellen Galvin to review the traffic study done on Monroe Avenue at all of Leopold School.
And before Dave jumps in on this, and I don't know if we necessarily have to review the whole thing, that was a traffic study that was done for speed, right?
It's 3 studies that actually were done.
For speed.
There was 2 for speed and 1 for adult crossing guard at
Okay.
Eliza and Monroe.
I'm not advocating, there was another incident amongst all the incidents that will always occur on Monroe Street. The school has done a very good job of notifying the parents that if they're dropping their children off, they should not drop them off on the west side of Monroe Street, unless they're gonna have them go down to Porlier Street and cross with the lights. This incident involved a child that decided to cross at Eliza Street. A vehicle stopped, one overdid, and the kid was almost hit, okay? And this is gonna continue to happen on that street, and I don't think it's necessarily speed related. I think a lot of it is inattentive driving, because the 2 times I was almost hit at Eliza and Monroe, both people that hit me were on their phones, and they weren't paying attention. But what I'm asking for, speed study aside, is there was a recommendation to put up a electronic speed sign, like you see in some other areas where it flashes your speed. If, you know, let's say the speed limit is 25, and they can set it so if you hit 30, it starts flashing to let you know you're over the speed limit to catch your attention. The problem with those signs, they found out, is that if you put it up there, after a while, people become immune to it. Because, all right, I'm going, nothing happens, there's no consequences. The same gentleman I talked about, Peter Fluke, says the best way to use those signs is when it's on, you can install it, but when it's on, there's a police officer sitting somewhere around there with a radar or a laser gun waiting to take enforcement action. So people learn when the sign flashes, and if they're over the speed limit, they're probably gonna see someone getting pulled over. So you have an educational process there, and you also have an enforcement process. And that's one of the things I'm asking for on Monroe Street in that area. After this child was almost hit, I had a meeting with the principal, with some of the other staff, including Rhonda Sintikal. And what the school has decided to do is they're assigning a staff member to the intersection of Eliza and Monroe. And when they see children approaching that corner, they're gonna urge them to go down to Porlier Street and cross with the lights. And I'm okay with that. I think assigning a crossing guard there, why there, and then why not Emily Street? And then why not Grignan Street? And why not the next intersection north there? By all means, all of Leopold is not the only school that wants more crossing guards and more speed enforcement and everything else. It's wanted all over the city. And I know from when I was on the police department and I was community police captain, every neighborhood association, the #1 complaint was traffic. Okay, it was always traffic. It was never drugs or any other stuff. It was always traffic was the main complaint. And part of why I had the item just before. So what I'm asking for here, though, is that we get that sign installed. The police department set up some set deployments for traffic enforcement. I know they put some CSIs out there with radar guns. They took down license plate numbers. They sent out letters informing the owners who were speeding in this area. It's a school, you know, there's responsibilities here. And I'd also like to see some deployments of Frogger. We can do it in the winter, that's not necessarily a warm weather thing.
Can I speak to that
Sure.
just for a second? Is that all right? Frogger was actually a pedestrian safety grant through the state of Wisconsin. We last deployed in 2015, where most of these deployments, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about Motor Bike Task Force, the pedestrian safety, and right now we're running a Click It or Ticket grant. We did not receive a pedestrian safety grant from the state this year, so we are only running 2 task force, so to speak, and it's the clicker ticket, which is also called speed and seatbelt, and the other one is the OWI task force. Those, and Mr. Galvin mentioned it earlier about having deployment set for a year. That's exactly what the state does with these grant deployments or these grant task forces, but they choose them. I don't. I just happen to schedule them and send people out to work them. I was going to make a point on the last topic about being able to do a lot of this, at least from my world, enforcement-wise. It's going to cost money, and we all know that, but I was going to speak to the, and you guys kind of touched on the grants that might be available, and I don't know, being relatively new and I have such a cold, I can't talk, I don't know locally what's available grant-wise to help support some of the enforcement efforts. I'm all for it. The problem is I don't necessarily have enough people to put out on regular deployments. I can utilize the CPs, I can utilize certainly the CSIs. I'm not sure that's the kind of enforcement though that you're talking about. It's something.
And this is, you know, I mean, we don't need to pay a cop overtime to take traffic enforcement, okay? And I'm not trying to stir the pot with the department or with the union, but there are community police officers, there's regular patrol officers. I know they're down to only 1 traffic enforcement officer, but if you were to go out twice a month and have CPs sit there during the school hours, so we're not asking for about a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon. If you went out twice a month, turn on the sign, do some enforcement, send some CSIs out there a couple more times a month, send out some letters to vehicle owners that your vehicle was observed speeding in this area. Get some CSIs again, and a couple of CPs or the traffic enforcement guy, and do some Frogger deployments. You know, if you did 2 Frogger deployments a month, 2 traffic enforcements a month, and then say 2 where you're just sending out letters, that'd be 6 deployments a month, and I think it would have some impact on this street, and it would show the residents and the parents whose kids are going to school that we do care about this and we are taking some action. Now, I think eventually, my bigger plan that we were just talking about before, if that comes to fruition, that would take care of these kind of things. I think, you know, with an education and a citywide enforcement program, and engineering and the other 2 E's, Dave, I don't remember what they were, say the 5 E's. If we had a plan, I think you would start to see citywide more compliance, less complaints. Because I've got an email here that Brad gave me, and I got the same letter. We had a near hit on Webster and Emily with a parent crossing their children to go to school. So it's, and it's not just all the Leopold. My God, Brad, how many schools do you get complaints from the parents and the teachers and everything else? And when I used to do enforcement, Dave's right. Half the people, when I was stopping at schools, were teachers and parents late for school. That was literally half the stops I was making. So we've got a problem in this community, and not just this community, but it's an attitude where people don't even understand what their responsibilities are and what they're supposed to be doing. And it's chasing this thing, and it's a number of other things. It's not just speed, but it's so many other things that are involved. And so I'm asking for this small, short solution till the end of the school year at all of Leopold. But in the meantime, I'm asking for a more holistic, community-wide solution for the entire city.
What's the latest on the sign there, Dave?
Well, what I'm going to do is, I look at the request and I just figured I'm going to print out those reports and I'm going to give them to you.
We had taken this up 2 years ago, didn't we?
Right, it started 2 years ago, yeah, and bear with me, I think I can run through this pretty quickly. Actually, why don't you just take one down and pass it around, you know, so. I believe I have these in chronological order.
My finger's working. There we go.
So, not really going to touch much on this first speed study, other than I want to just focus in on the recommendations. If you go to the last page, you will see a total of 8 recommendations. I believe 6 of them were engineering based. The first one was more or less looking at the speed limit there. Just as a refresher, based off of our engineering evaluation, that the speed limit, posted speed limit is actually too low, it's artificially low. It's based off of a number of things. We feel it should be posted 30. It was posted 30 prior to 2002. We can argue that point, but I don't think that's really what we're here for today. We installed some speed limit signs, some school crosswalk signs at both Emily and Eliza. So if you go down the corridor, you'll see they're doubled up on both sides at both crosswalks. We did have a motion to increase the enforcement out there. And our goal was to get it within 5 miles an hour of the posted speed. So basically, if we can get it between 25 and 30, or even lower, that'd be great. But realistically, between 25 and 30, that was the goal. We're also having on here working with the school staff to consider changing the begin time of school, because that seems where the conflict was. Everyone's coming to school while the AM rush is coming into downtown. They just happen to coincide. One, kind of out of the box recommendation that I made was just separate those a little bit. You avoid the conflict. That was not moved forward with.
Well, Dave, I will say that the school did institute a breakfast program. So it's pulling children into the school earlier in the day to try and alleviate some of that, but they were, I can't remember why at the meeting, why they were unable to actually alter that, the set starting time. But with the school program, they're pulling in a good number of children earlier than before.
Sure, and probably one of the resultants of that would be, and I know you touched on it about potentially having a guard at Portlier and so forth, and so it's part of the discussion. I'm also seeing, actually, it happens to be the principal there, Teresa Lambert.
Right.
She's wearing a fluorescent vest, reflectorized, it even has some flashing lights on it. She's out there early in the morning. I'm in by 7:30 here, so I'm going by the school at about 20 after 7, and I see her out there at that time, which is significantly earlier, so that could be part of that.
Right.
So anyway, the other thing was about the speed feedback or the driver feedback signs. I'll touch a little bit more on that in the next study, and then talking about if we can't reduce the speed limit, that to investigate those signs a little bit closer. Again, we had at that same meeting, an adult crossing guard study was conducted for Emily and Eliza Streets at Monroe. Long story short, the recommendation, which was also approved by Traffic Commission at the time and City Council, which received and placed on file the crossing guard study. As we found out, there really wasn't, there was peaks where there were absolutely no children crossing, and when there were children crossing, each of them were accompanied by an adult. Therefore, we didn't really see the need to have another adult present for that purpose. So that was what, I guess, the crux of our recommendation. And I want to focus a little bit more on this last study of here, I got one extra study. For the follow-up speed study. So part of that was the Traffic Commission and Council made recommendations that came back to Public Works to prepare a cost estimate for those driver feedback signs on Monroe, and then what to do after another speed study was conducted, which was done as part of this study. So the cost estimate, they came in pretty close. We had a direct powered and solar powered. The solar powered was less, and it's actually less maintenance. The cost to install, at least when we looked at it a year ago, was $22,517. The reason that the price is probably a little bit more than what I think some people would expect it to be is because an overhead system is what we recommended. We made that recommendation based off of some studies out there showing that there's higher driver compliance to the overhead installations, as well as we received similar information back from the City of Madison staff, who when they have implemented some of these signs in their community, And they will only do it this way because they did it the other way and then they did it this way, and they see more of a compliance with the overhead. So we just feel if you're gonna put some money towards, invest the additional money to at least get compliance. We did look at the vehicle speeds, and we did, there was a before and after analysis. And we did see a reduction after the speed enforcement was in place. If you look at figure 4 on page 5, that shows actually the number of citations, warnings, or failure to yield in crosswalk and speed. So there was a, just looking at that, there was 42 citations for failure to yield. There were 8 warnings. As for speed, there were 86 citations for speed and 23 warnings for speed. That was conducted May 5th through September 21st.
Are these the citations on those specific dates?
I believe so, yeah. This is information I received from Brad's predecessor, Lieutenant Colonel Ackerman, and I believe that that's when those stings were conducted.
So on September 12th, we had 16 citations and 3 warnings.
Correct. Well, yeah, and you can see in the comment, he broke it down into how many man hours he dedicated to each sting. You can look at all the details. I tried to break it down in as many different ways, but you'll see that there was, the average speed decreased by 1 mile an hour. So the observed speed, closest speed, 5 over. So basically, they got the average speed down to 30. 85th percentile was dropped by 2 miles an hour down to 9. The 95th percentile, which is really just looking at excessive speeding, and that was also decreased from 38 to 36. And looking at the pace speeds, not that that means a lot to you, but I look at that 85th percentile is getting towards the upper value of that pace, and you have a high concentration, usually over 70% of vehicle pace within that pace, in this case 78. That's actually a pretty good number. That actually, when I looked at that number, reinforced to me that a posted speed limit of 30 is probably more realistic. I would have more concerns, about maybe wanting to make a recommendation of 25 if I saw a crash history that showed it, but I just couldn't find that. So I guess looking at the speed feedback signs, I think that's really kind of what we're looking at, and that's what I hear from Alder Galvin. Too, as part of his recommendation, is to install those signs, but only with the acknowledgement that there would be some sort of police enforcement that would be coinciding with that. When those signs are active, there would be some sort of enforcement effort done. At least that's what Peter had said was what he had recommended. I see some merit to that. I'm just kind of speaking off my experience here, but not as part of this report, that I see some benefit to that. I will say that motorists will probably catch on to that, though, that if enforcement is only done when those signs are on, they're going to catch it and be like, well, signs are not, no cops. So I see I have some concern with that sort of an approach. I think it should be varied. I've seen the most success where you have concentrated enforcement during the times when it's really needed, so in this case, say morning peak inbound, that's there because that's when you want them down, but then you make it kind of sporadic. Again, I'm not an officer, I'm not going to claim to be the expert in that field. It's just my experience I've seen is where you have kind of a twofold approach where you get those peaks where you really need it down. That's when you put the enforcement out there, and then the others are kind of just, you throw them out there and you surprise people. But it's on a continuing frequency that it just doesn't stop. That there's always this variability to when it happens, but it's happening and it's not stopping. To me, that's probably the beauty of the Rosendale effect, which I know that I may have made references to that in my reports, and I believe, and again, it's anecdotally, this isn't based off an engineering evaluation, it's based off my experience of driving through this corridor twice a day, and I do it during in the morning peak coming in. I can certainly tell you that there's a Rosendale effect, because you have 35 mile an hour posted all the way from 172 into the city limit. I'd say the people, even looking at the speed on here, I think it's actually a little bit lower now, because I usually try to just drive the pace, and most people are going probably between 38 and 42 up until you get into the city. But then when we added those extra signs, I remember doubling them up. I worked with the DOT to actually get some oversized signs. People are slowing down. There's no doubt that people are slowing down. Of course, I'm making a conscious effort, but I'm not seeing as many people passing me as I did in the past. So I think that there has been some success. I'm going to presume that it's part engineering, part enforcement efforts that we've had in the past. But breaking it down into the conclusions, I guess, what I'm going to summarize on the speed feedback signs that are more in the recommendations. And I'm just going to read this verbatim because I think I really summarized a lot of the conclusions that we found from the speed study and our investigation into the plausibility and feasibility of these feedback signs. So, given that no pedestrian-related crashes have occurred, when I say, I mean, at this time of the writing, there was really just a dog one at that time. Again, I know that we've had the one that, you know, there was a newspaper article relative to it. She had approached us about the child that was in near this, and that was within, I think, the last month or 2 months. So, given that no pedestrian-related crashes have occurred at the time of writing, that school peak pedestrian activity is low most of the time and none some of the time, that South Monroe Avenue has experienced a continued decrease in operating speeds, maybe not within that, to get it to 30 yet for the 85th, but they are on the downward trend. That the posted speed is lower than the roadway features dictate, that there is a discrepancy on how to operate feedback board signs in school given the state law. Let me just make a clarification on that. We are a state where it's a school speed limit, in our case 15 miles an hour when children are present. One of the concerns that I have in this report, and please take this back and look back at within this report, I was uncertain on how we would operate those signs in what I would call a variable speed limit or variable speed zone. It's 15 sometimes and it's 25 sometimes. So, do you set that sign to flash over 15 miles an hour during a certain time? I had stated my concern for that because our state statute doesn't even support that. That speed limit only changes to 15 when there are children present, meaning that they are in the road, on the sidewalk or they're crossing the street in a crosswalk.
Right.
That's the only time it's 15. Other than that, it's 25. I don't care if
No
there's
kids.
if there's kids on a
Then it's
playground
25.
and they're within sight, it still is 25. So my concern with the driver feedback sign, if operated during those school peak times, is very unclear to me, and I don't know how you could possibly do that. If you do it outside, if you just have the speed driver feedback signs outside of one school, children are anticipated to be there, I think you'd have more success with it. Because then at least you can program it and you don't have to, you know, there's no way to prove it, that there's children there or not there. You know, the sign's
And I
programmed.
can vouch for the outside of school time as well. I live in a neighborhood and my walking route crosses Webster and Monroe 4 times, and the drivers don't stop. I mean, they don't,
Right.
they're just not.
And it's not just speed, it's, you know, I know other departments have done this where they position someone at an intersection and they stand out there, not inside a car, they're watching as people go by, and if they see them on their cell phones, they have chase cars down the block and they can pull them over. And they don't, you know, unless you can prove they're actually texting or something, so you can certainly make them aware that it's inattentive driving. And this is what I think is, it's not just speed. I think Dave's right. The speed isn't horrendous, and considering the amount of traffic volume, it probably could be 30 if we knew people would stay within close to that parameter. But it's the combination of speed and inattention and not understanding that they have to yield to pedestrians that creates a lot of our conflicts and problems.
Yeah, especially that last part. I mean, I can't tell you how many minivans I've pointed to the pedestrian signs. I'm in the road and they're looking right at me and just
Yeah,
keep going. It's
they
not
just keep going.
See, that, and I think that's what frustrates us engineers, it frustrates the enforcement and the elected official, and you as a resident and a neighbor in that area. I mean, like you said, you're pointing at the signs. I'm going, we just added all these fluorescent, yellow, green, double them up, everything like that. It's like I'm running out of tools in my toolbox. It's like
We've got to take off, we've got
Okay.
council. But I guess what I'm asking for is 6 police deployments a month till the end of the year. You can do 2 for speeding, 2 for Frogger, and 2 where they're just sending out letters.
I'll work with the district captains on getting that to happen.
Yeah, You know, and then if I get the feedback, so we have it, but that's what I'm asking for. You know, and just till the school's done, and then hopefully this Safe Routes program will be kicking in, and hopefully the other thing I want to take to the mayor's office, we can get something going on that, and that'll be something that will encompass more in this entire community.
Is that a recommendation we have to make, or just?
I would say yes.
Communication?
No, I would say traffic commission should make a recommendation if indeed that's what they want is the enforcement effort.
And I'm asking for the sign too, Dave, if you know, I know you got a budget for that, so I know that may not happen this year, but.
And obviously it's middle of winter.
Right, so I
so-
understand too.
Right, okay, so that's his recommendation.
You're talking the
Obviously-
sign though, but isn't
I
there some
wouldn't go along
controversy in the
with
sign though?
What's that?
You
I
haven't,
stand by the reports.
Yeah.
you're saying, you know, it's 15, there's a 25, but I'm not sure the sign works.
I'm saying if that sign is flashing 25, and there's kids present, then everyone knows it's 15, because there's all sorts of stationary signs there, okay? So, I think you can install that sign. I mean, if someone's going 25 over, you know,
I'd like to call to
or
order the meeting of the
they're gonna
common
get pulled over
council
anyway,
for
so.
Monday, January
I don't think there's a
15th.
conflict.
Wait till he gets done with this.
If you would please
Okay.
press.
Can I just ask what you don't mind? Left turn on Alpine, send it to him, because I like to get a cost, what it might cost. We talked about this, crash sites, you can talk what it's gonna cost to do something like that, because it's gonna cost some money if we have it in our budget. Left turn on Alpine.
Right, yeah. We don't have it in the 18 budget. I can-
No, I know, but I'll bring it back next month, just put all that together, so I can bring something back, because I get a lot of complaints on that. And the one on Deckner, just bring back next month. I'll get the
All
people
right,
here, they're
so
not here.
we,
Okay.
Okay, are you good with both them?
I mean, I'm not the one making the motion, but I know.
I mean, are you understand what
I think we understand what you
I
want.
understand what
Yeah,
you're
because we
saying.
talked about it.
Refer
That
to
way we
staff
can-
and
What's that?
postpone, refer to staff and postpone for a month.
And we'll proceed. If you'd all please now rise.
Sorry,
for the
thanks.
pledge of
Take care.
allegiance. Remain
All right,
standing for the
let's get back to 10, or I'm sorry, 9.
Nine.
I pledge
I'll
allegiance.
make a motion to forward to the police department that 6 total, whatever, Alderman Galvin wanted. And then that's it, because I still agree with the study not to put
Heavenly
the
Father,
sign.
tonight we pray for the leaders of
And
this
that's
community.
With the
and for
sign.
leaders of
So
this
I'm not
country.
even gonna mention the sign,
As
because
we
I know
face
the council
challenging
will delete
times
out
and
the one
situations,
word.
both locally and nationally,
So,
let us always be mindful.
so refer.
You've been around it.
Yeah, 12 years on this
Today, we
thing.
celebrate and honor men.
So was it 6
A leader
enforcement
of
efforts per
nonviolent
month? Is that what this was?
That's what it's required.
That's what,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I have
We
to,
believe
I have to
in
find
the
those
powerful
bodies.
method of
Exactly.
achieving
I mean, it's just a
social
recommendation
justice
that
Right.
they're gonna council.
create
And I will do my
a
very best to
society
do that,
based
but
on
with
compassion,
staffing 17
peace,
people right
and
now, it's
brotherhood.
difficult.
Exactly.
Oh,
Help all of us
part of his
here
request,
gather
and
these
that's the
chambers
6
to
enforcements
pursue
I get,
that
but he's
goal.
asking about the sign, and how do we gonna handle that? Are we
Just
gonna
leave it
deny
out.
it?
I'm just leaving it out, because it didn't say
Okay.
anything about the sign in the
Alright.
motion.
Oh, and he asked you, Dave, you know what,
And live
what we
the
said is, you know, we're uncomfortable because of the disparity of,
military personnel.
Yeah, I just really don't know how
Okay.
to operate one, and I've asked Madison and everything, they're like, we don't do anything with that, you know?
alright.
So my motion is only to forward to
Okay.
the enforcement for the 6 times to the end of the
You got a
school.
second?
So is it the end of the school year, is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
Through, okay.
Through.
All right, with that, I
May,
will
June,
entertain a
whatever.
motion for approval of
Whenever
the
school's
December
out.
19th meeting. We have a motion by Alderman Nicholson,
Second.
second by Alderman Spiano.
Second? Dan?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Motion been made, and
Corrections, deletions.
All in
here on
favor?
those minutes.
Aye.
Seeing no
Motion
votes, all
carries.
in favor of that motion, please signify by
alright,
saying
let's
aye.
go back to
Those opposed, nays. Ayes
number,
have it.
number 4 it would
The
be,
minutes of the December 19th.
Alderman
Where were
Dwayne
we now?
asked,
have been
Number
approved.
4.
back to 4.
Alderman
Alderman Dwayne asked to
Refer to staff.
refer to staff on that one.
That was gonna be my recommendation anyway, I'll spare you the details, but I was gonna say.
I'll make that motion.
Motion been made,
Staff.
seconded, all in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
motion
Please
carries.
signify by saying aye.
Then 5, he said to bring back next month.
I'll make a motion.
Postpone for 1 month, right on 5.
I'm really on report by the mayor.
Dan again?
Chief, I want to be sensitive to HIPAA, but we're glad you're back.
All right.
Chief
And now we're
had
now to number
10.
a scared, but with a great.
You got everything, David?
Fire department and
What's that?
You got everything for 4 and 5
medical
then?
knowledge.
Okay.
You are,
I'm already pretending.
All right, 10, consideration of possible action under request by Alderman Weary to add a school crossing guard in the area of Mason, Meacham, and Mason, Oneida.
There is actually a district-employed crossing guard that was requested by the district as per that new agreement. So it's a district-employed guard at the intersection of Mason and Meacham. This happened, I made the recommendation officially in the memo, November 9th, 2017. It's my understanding that they are working there. I do know, though, that I don't think they're working both AM and PM. I believe it's just the afternoon that they're working. That's the thing with the district agreement now that we have, is that you can't really stipulate hours. It's kind of like, you know, they do it when it's available kind of thing. It's, you know, I just approve of the locations, and that's it. However they, you know, what timeframes they want to do it. I mean, I can stipulate certain things, and if this is something that I need to revisit and they want that to happen, I can certainly do that if that's the wishes of the traffic commission. I have no problem with making recommendations to give them out to both peaks.
Well, if they already got a district employed one, they're just at their availability, and if the alderman wants it there full-time, should it just be considered next year when they bring the whole school package to us?
Right. Yeah,
Being that we're in January right now.
Yeah, right. And to add to that, I mean, I haven't heard anything from Alderman Weary on this. He never contacted me relative to what his position was, other than he could put it on the agenda, so I did.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, being that it is Martin Luther King.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file, since they already got a district employed one there.
Motion been made, do I hear a second?
I vote darkness, only light. can be
Motion been made and second, all in favor?
I vote heat,
Aye.
only love.
Motion carries. 11, consideration of possible action on request by Alderman Weary on behalf of the Green Bay Area Public School District to establish a no parking, bus loading only zone on the south side of 9th Street, just west
We're on
of
to
Ridge
referrals
Road.
of petitions and communications.
Yes,
I'm including your
this
package
has
of
been
all
somewhat of
petitions and
a,
communications received by the clerk's
definitely a,
office by noon on Thursday. We will
project in
accept any other
progress.
communications you may
And I
have.
think that we've come to an ultimate solution at Jackson Elementary. Let me just explain to you some of the issues. We have a pretty tight area in here on 9th Street where bus, or there's, it's actually no parking zone right now. Actually, no, I'm just gonna bring up this, I got a diagram, I think that shows this much better.
Protection and welfare on city authority as it pertains to domestic abuse, to include bail bonds,
I just
sentencing, and victim
view, I
resources.
think I can do a full screen
And
here.
the third is for police, for a review
Full
of department
screen.
policies
Here we go.
regarding domestic abuse calls, follow-up, and
So
responsibilities.
what I want to point out to you is this up here is more or less, this is Ridge Road and 9th. So this is looking east, school is here. To preserve the right turn in the lane here, we have a 100-foot no stop understanding zone. We also have a no stop understanding zone here. There was at one time, I believe, a crash that happened out of here. The landlord that owns the duplex came to us and asked for what he just wanted the parents from not parking there, from picking up and dropping off students. That was approved many years ago by Traffic Commission and Council to keep this in. So right now in this green area, that is a no parking zone for school days. So no parking, as we all know, you can have loading, unloading activity take place there. And as long as the motorist or the driver is in attendance of the vehicle, they're not cited. So in essence, this is like an area where parents will actually sit and wait for the kids. Now, they have a special needs program within the school where a lot of the classrooms are over here. They stated that there's some difficulty getting the students out to Ridge because there's some steps that go down and so forth. And they just started loading the buses over here, which is fine. I mean, buses can load as well in a no parking zone, but they want that dedicated to them. I went out and visited this in the field. I saw some issues with that because they were actually having 3 buses come in this area, and we were getting buses to actually stop in this live lane of traffic. So I said, I put a stop to all that. I said, this is a very unsafe activity. So, long story short, I got an agreement from them to, in essence, only have one bus there, or up to 2, once they clear this area here. My concern was when I stopped out there, this is all snow in this area. Just show you the next picture. So that you can see this area here. So no stopping or standing starts here, the loading would start here. So my concern with them is I said, well, what good is that doing to have a bus here that when you get snowbank that you can't load in it? So they agreed to have this cleared by their staff. I had some concerns about it being muddy and stuff in the spring, and they most likely, just like Notre Dame came to us, will probably want to fill that in with concrete once the weather gets better. I already verbally approved that with them. They have to come to the department, and because it's changed in terms of right away. Approved that. So with that, I would make a recommendation to change this no parking sign for school days to a no parking bus loading only with those contingencies that I have with the school district. In essence, fitting only the number of buses that they can in there. And they even said that they have that third bus, that bus comes around, and if there's no room, that they go around the block, and then they would park kind of close down by Locust Street, and then they'd be radioed in. And I even took it a step further and said I'd like to see that on their activity sheets, because I noticed it's not always consistent drivers, so that on their sheets, that those drivers aren't starting to do that. Because what I witnessed out there, I didn't think it was very unsafe. Where you had a bus, there's a back end hanging out, and there was motors going around them into opposing traffic, that close to a traffic signal. So I put a stop to that. I got parking enforcement to go and do their thing out there to make sure that activity stopped. And so I think that the school district will move forward with holding their end of the bargain if this is changed. Really, for now, I mean, they can go in there, but there's nothing prohibiting parents from being in there right now. So if this is just dedicated to them for the special needs program students, I think it's a reasonable request. They're still going to load on Ridge too. There's a bus loading zone on Ridge. It's actually dedicated, and there's an area even on Langley that has it as well. So I think that this is a pretty reasonable request. Like I said, there's been many hours going back and forth with the district staff to get this to work out. So I make a recommendation to approve the request.
So moved.
Motion been made,
Second?
seconded, all in favor? Motion carries. Termination of trial periods.
Yes.
Dave, you wanna
I will run through
Reader's
them.
Digest there?
Yep. So items 12, 13, 14, and 15 all have to do with the same area, next street by Basson Street. This is the one where over by same district. Anyway, they had employees parking out on the street, and I know that the plant manager was actually telling these people to get out of there, so there was a lot of voluntary complaints that was happening. So this is just shortening up that no parking here requires all allow one more resident to park on street. 16, 17, 18, and 19 are related. Nicolay Avenue over by the Tower Clock Eye Center. This is to add that add a no stopping or standing to stop people from parking too close to Mason Street, and then also adding in a 15-minute loading zone for their delivery trucks. So everything's working out there. So I also would recommend that one for the ordinance. And then 20 through 23 are all related to South Point Road over by the school, where we're removing some no parking zones and basically opening that out to allowing, instead of being a 24/7, 365 condition, it's only effective during school, which makes sense. You know, the problem's not there, just allowing residents to park in the street. It seems to be working. The 24 is on its own. This was that area on Washington Street for a 30-minute zone, the Nicolay Bank item. If you guys remember the discussion about having, you know, they wanted their own parking, and we said put a generic 30-minute there. So it seems to be working.
It's been 90 days already.
90 days.
If I could just make a note on item 3.
Mr. Chairman, I move in Moss, the termination of trial periods.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We want to thank Dan and James.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
So
We're adjourned.
when's our next meeting?
Is it 17th?
February 19th.
Or 19th? An odd number, I can remember.
I have Monday the 20th.
Or is it? Maybe it's
February, is
not.
that right?
Monday's the 19th
Yeah,
of
Monday's the
February.
19th.
It is?
I just have, I have one that was canceled, but I don't have a new one on my calendar.
Just double check
It's
here.
canceled for the 12th.
Well, we canceled December.
And the February 12th one you guys showing canceled?
19th is Monday in February.
Yeah, it is.
I think that might have been the original, and then we changed it.
Well, I don't usually put these together. It's
I
usually.
think it was the 19th, but that's the odd.
It's probably gonna be the 19th, I guess. I sent up that schedule, remember, I think at the end of December.
Yep.
So I didn't hear anything back, anyone having some concerns or anything, so I believe that the 19th was on that schedule, so.
Okay.
That work?
I don't think it's been sent out, Dave, on the
What's that?
calendar. I don't think it's been sent out on the calendar from your office.
Somebody sent out an appointment on the calendar.
Oh,
They
that's
just
right.
canceled it, but they didn't reschedule it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just for this
That's
one?
Yeah, just for February.
You know what, I think I saw that too, and I said something to her, and then she had said that something was right on it, so I'll look into it, just to make sure you guys got your meeting update.
I'm showing the 12th canceled, but nothing else rescheduled.
Stay warm.
See you in a month.
File municipal court report for December 2017 and building permit report for December 2017.
Is that good for you next month, the 19th?
Yeah, the following 2 months.
Are you okay? For March and April then?